The water was freezing, black as oil, and smelled of jet fuel. Elara didn't think. She just dove. She didn't know the man trapped in the sinking wreckage was Leandro Moretti, the most feared capo in the underworld. She didn't know that saving his life would put a target on her own back. All she knew was that he was drowning, and she was the only one there. But the real danger wasn't the crash. It was what happened the next morning, when 5 black SUVs rolled up her driveway, and a war she never asked for came knocking at her door. The storm had come out of nowhere, tearing through the calm summer night of upstate New York like a jagged knife. Elara Vance sat on the rotting wood of her dock, her legs dangling over the edge. The rain soaked her instantly, plastering her dark hair to her neck. But she didn't move. The cold felt good. It numbed the ache in her chest that had been there since the bank foreclosed on the family bakery 3 days ago. She lived in a small, weathered A-frame cabin on the edge of Blackwater Lake, a secluded, moody body of water that the locals usually avoided after dark. Tonight, the lake was a churning abyss. Then she heard it. It wasn't thunder. It was the screaming whine of a turbine engine in distress. Elara looked up, squinting against the stinging rain. A shape, darker than the night sky, hurtled down from the clouds. It was a small private jet, trailing smoke that glowed orange in the lightning flashes. It didn't glide. It fell. With a sound like the earth cracking open, the jet slammed into the water about 200 yards from her dock. The impact sent a wall of water rushing toward her, soaking her boots. Silence followed for a heartbeat, then the hissing of hot metal meeting cold water. "Oh my God," Elara whispered. She scrambled to her feet. Most people would have run for a phone. Elara ran for her boat. It was a beat-up aluminum fishing skiff with a rusted outboard motor. She prayed it would start. She yanked the cord. Nothing. She yanked again, gritting her teeth. "Come on." The engine sputtered to life on the third pull. She gunned it, the nose of the skiff lifting as she tore toward the wreckage. The jet was already half submerged. The tail fin stuck out like a shark's dorsal, but the cockpit was going under fast. Fuel slicked the surface of the water, burning her nostrils. "Is anyone there?" she screamed, cutting the engine as she drifted alongside the fuselage. The door was jammed. She could see movement inside the cockpit glass, a hand slamming against the window. The water was rising inside. Elara didn't have tools. She grabbed the heavy anchor from the bottom of her boat. Adrenaline, sharp and electric, surged through her veins. She climbed onto the slippery wing of the sinking jet. The metal was hot. She swung the anchor. Clang. The glass cracked. She swung again, putting every ounce of her frustration, her anger at the world, into the blow. The glass shattered. "Get out!" she yelled, reaching into the darkness. A hand gripped hers. It was strong, calloused, and freezing. She pulled. It felt like pulling a boulder. "My leg, it's stuck," a voice groaned. It was deep, strained, but oddly calm for a dying man. "I don't care. Pull!" Elara braced her feet against the fuselage. The water was at the man's chin now. "You are not dying on my watch." She heaved backward, her muscles screaming. The man let out a guttural roar of pain, and suddenly, he broke free. Elara tumbled backward into her skiff, dragging the man with her. They landed in a heap on the wet metal floor of the boat. The man was coughing up water, gasping for air. Elara scrambled to the motor, revving it just as the jet gave a final groan and slipped beneath the surface of Blackwater Lake. She steered them back to her dock, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Once they were tied up, she finally looked at him. He was dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her house. It was ruined now, soaked in lake water and oil. He had dark hair, plastered to his forehead, and a jawline that looked carved from granite. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. "Can you walk?" she asked, shivering now that the adrenaline was fading. He nodded grimly. "I think so." She helped him up the path to her cabin. Inside it was warm. She sat him on her worn-out beige sofa and threw a quilt over his shoulders. "I'll get the first aid kit," she said. When she returned, he was looking around the small room. He looked out of place among her thrift store furniture and piles of books. He looked like a wolf trapped in a rabbit's den. "I'm Elara," she said, dabbing alcohol on the cut on his forehead. He didn't flinch. He looked at her then. His eyes were a startling shade of amber, intense and predatory. "Leandro." "Just Leandro? For now?" "Well, Leandro, you're lucky to be alive. That crash, I should call the police. The ambulance." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not painful, but firm. "No police, no ambulance." Elara froze. "You just crashed a plane. You're bleeding." "I have my own doctors, my own people." He released her wrist slowly. "If you call the police, you put yourself in danger. Trust me." There was something in his voice, an absolute authority, that made her believe him. She realized then that this wasn't just a rich businessman. The jagged scar running down his neck, hidden by the collar of his shirt, told a different story. "Okay," she said softly. "No police." He stayed the night. He slept on her couch, fitfully, muttering names in his sleep. Damon. The shipment. Betrayal. Elara sat in the kitchen with a shotgun across her lap, watching the door. She didn't sleep a wink. She had pulled something out of the lake, something dangerous, and she had a feeling her life was about to change. Elara must have dozed off just before dawn. She woke up with a crick in her neck, her head resting on the kitchen table. The cabin was silent. The storm had passed, leaving behind a heavy, humid mist. She looked at the couch. The quilt was folded neatly. The man, Leandro, was gone. Panic flared in her chest. Had she imagined it? No. The wet spot on the floorboards was still there. The bloody gauze in the trash can was real. She walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. Her breath hitched. Her driveway was usually empty, save for her rusty pickup truck. Now it looked like a funeral procession for a head of state. Tim. Massive, black Cadillac Escalades were parked in a perfect phalanx. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like polished obsidian. Men in black suits were standing by the vehicles. They wore earpieces and sunglasses, despite the early hour. They stood with a military stiffness, hands clasped in front of them. Elara grabbed the shotgun again. She didn't load it. She didn't want to kill anyone. But the weight of it gave her courage. She marched to the front door and threw it open. "Get off my property!" she yelled, leveling the gun at the nearest suit. The men didn't even flinch. They didn't reach for weapons. They just watched her. The door of the lead SUV opened. A man stepped out. It wasn't Leandro. This man was older, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been eroded by harsh winds. He wore a tuxedo, impeccably pressed. He walked toward her, stopping 10 feet away. He bowed slightly. "Miss Vance," he said. His voice was smooth, cultured. Please, lower the weapon. We are not here to harm you. Who are you? Elara demanded, her hands shaking slightly. Where is Leandro? Mr. Moretti is safe, thanks to you, the older man said. My name is Giovanni. I am Mr. Moretti's assistant. He sent us. Sent you for what? To retrieve you. Elara laughed, a short, nervous sound. Retrieve me? I'm not a package. I saved his life. He left. End of story. Tell him he's welcome and get these cars off my lawn. Giovanni smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm afraid it is not that simple, Miss Vance. The crash last night. It was not an accident. It was sabotage. Elara lowered the gun slightly. Sabotage? Someone tried to kill Mr. Moretti, and now you are the only witness to the fact that he survived. More importantly, you saw the crash site before we could clean it. You might have seen things. Evidence. I didn't see anything. Just a sinking plane. Our enemies won't believe that, Giovanni said gravely. If they find out you pulled him from the wreckage, they will come for you. They will torture you to find out where he is. Staying here is a death sentence. Elara looked around at her small cabin, the woods she loved. This is my home. This is a target, Giovanni corrected. Mr. Moretti is a man of honor. He pays his debts. You saved his life, so now he will save yours. He offers you protection. Infinite protection. And if I say no, Giovanni sighed, then we will leave a detail of 4 men here to guard you. But a stationary target is eventually hit. It is safer if you come with us. Elara looked at the men, the cars, the sheer power radiating from them. She thought about the foreclosure notice on the counter. She thought about her empty bank account. She thought about the thrill she felt last night, pulling a man from the jaws of death. Where is he? She asked. New York City. The penthouse at the Obsidian Tower. Elara lowered the shotgun completely. I need to pack a bag. We have taken the liberty of purchasing a wardrobe for you, Miss Vance. We need to move. Now. She hesitated for 1 second. Then she walked back inside, grabbed her mother's locket from the nightstand, and walked out. She locked the door to her cabin, wondering if she would ever see it again. She climbed into the back of the second SUV. The interior smelled of expensive leather and mint. As the convoy pulled away, gravel crunching under the tires, Elara realized she had just stepped out of the frying pan and into the fire. The ride to New York City took 3 hours. No one spoke to her. The driver was a wall of silence. Elara watched the trees blur into suburbs, and suburbs blur into the grey, towering skyline of Manhattan. They didn't stop at the front entrance of the Obsidian Tower. They drove into an underground garage that looked more like a bunker. Concrete walls, reinforced steel doors, and more armed guards. Giovanni opened her door. Follow me, please. They took a private elevator. It had no buttons, just a retinal scanner. Giovanni leaned in, a red light scanned his eye, and the car shot upward. Her ears popped. The doors slid open, and Elara gasped. The penthouse was massive. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a 360-degree view of the city. The furniture was sleek, modern, and terrifyingly white. It felt cold, like a museum, not a home. And there, standing by the window looking out at the Empire State Building, was Leandro. He had cleaned up. He wore a fresh suit, navy blue this time, tailored to perfection. His dark hair was slicked back. He held a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He turned as she entered. The limp was gone, or he was hiding it well. "Elara," he said. His voice sent a shiver down her spine. It was low, dangerous, and intimate. "Leandro," she replied, crossing her arms. "Or should I say, Mr. Moretti. The man who has 5 SUVs kidnap women from their homes." He smirked. It changed his face, making him look younger, less severe. "Kidnap is a strong word. I prefer aggressive rescue." He walked over to a bar cart and poured a second glass. He held it out to her. "Bourbon. Rare breed. It helps with the shock." She took it, but didn't drink. "Your man, Giovanni, said someone tried to kill you." Leandro's face darkened. The playful smirk vanished. "Yes. My brake lines were cut. My altimeter was tampered with. It was an inside job. And that involves me." "How?" "Because," Leandro stepped closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of sandalwood and danger. "The only people who knew my flight path were my inner circle. My brother, Damon, my consigliere, Mason, and my fiancée, Sophia." Elara's eyebrows shot up. "Fiancée." "Ex-fiancée, as of this morning," Leandro said coldly. "I suspect one of them wants to take over the Moretti crime family. Until I find out who, I am technically dead. The world thinks Leandro Moretti died in that lake." "So I'm hiding out with a ghost," Elara said dryly. "You are hiding with the king," Leandro corrected. "And you are the queen, for now. Excuse me. You need a cover. If you stay here, people will talk. The staff will talk. So we control the narrative. You are not a witness. You are my new nurse, my private caretaker helping me recover from a skiing accident in the Alps." Elara stared at him. "I'm a baker, Leandro. I make sourdough, not medical charts." "You saved my life in a storm with an anchor and grit," Leandro said, his eyes scanning her face. "I think you can handle checking my bandages." Suddenly, the elevator doors pinged. Leandro stiffened. He grabbed Elara's arm and pulled her close, his hand resting on the small of her back. "Play along," he whispered in her ear. A man walked in. He looked like a younger, sharper version of Leandro. He had the same dark eyes, but where Leandro's were intense, this man's were shifty. "Leandro!" the man cried, rushing forward with wide arms. "My God, brother! We heard reports. We thought the worst." Leandro didn't let go of Elara. He smiled, a tight, predatory smile. "Damon, you know I'm hard to kill." Damon stopped, his eyes falling on Elara. He looked her up and down with a sleazy kind of appreciation. "And who is this lovely creature?" "This," Leandro said, pulling Elara flush against his side, "is Elara. She's the one who saved me." Damon's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Just a twitch, but Elara saw it. It was disappointment. "A hero," Damon said, recovering quickly. He reached out to take Elara's hand. "We owe you everything." As his skin touched hers, Elara felt a wave of revulsion. His hand was clammy. "Damon," Leandro said, his voice dropping an octave. "I need you to call a meeting of the commission. Tonight." "Tonight? Leandro, you're injured. You should rest." "Tonight," Leandro repeated. "I want everyone to know I'm back, and I want them to meet Elara." Damon's eyes narrowed. Why would they need to meet her? Leandro looked at Elara, and for a moment, the acting stopped. He looked at her with a strange intensity. "Because," Leandro lied smoothly, "I intend to marry her." Elara choked on her spit. Damon looked like he had been slapped. "Marry her," Damon stammered. "But, Sophia, the alliance with the Russo family." "To hell with the Russos," Leandro said. "Get out, Damon. Set up the meeting." Damon glared at Elara one last time, a look of pure venom, and turned on his heel. As the elevator doors closed, Elara shoved Leandro away. "Marry me," she hissed. "Are you insane?" Leandro downed his drink in one gulp. "Damon is the one who sabotaged the plane." I saw the look in his eyes. "He needs to believe I'm erratic, acting on impulse. It will make him sloppy. It will make him make a mistake." "So I'm bait," Elara said, her voice trembling with anger. "You're using me as bait for your psychopath brother." Leandro walked to the window, looking out at the city that he ruled. "Yes," he said softly, "but I promise you, Elara, I won't let him take the bait. I will burn this city to the ground before I let anyone touch you." He turned back to her. "Welcome to the family, cara mia." Elara looked at the man who had brought a war to her doorstep. She should hate him. She should run. But as she looked at his wounded forehead and the fire in his amber eyes, she realized the terrifying truth. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to see what happened next. The transformation took 3 hours. It was an army of stylists, not soldiers, that invaded the penthouse this time. Elara stood like a mannequin as they poked, prodded, and polished her. "Hold still, Bella," a stylist named Marco muttered, pinning a stray lock of her dark hair. "Mr. Moretti wants perfection." Elara looked at herself in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Her calloused hands, rough from kneading dough and hauling flour sacks, were now softened with lotions and adorned with a diamond ring the size of a grape. The dress was a weapon in itself, emerald green silk that clung to every curve, with a slit that went dangerously high up her thigh. It was backless, exposing the tanned skin she usually hid under flannel shirts. "I look ridiculous," Elara muttered, "like a kid playing dress-up." "You look lethal," a voice said from the doorway. Leandro walked in. The stylists immediately scattered, bowing their heads as they exited the room, leaving the two of them alone. Leandro stopped a few feet away, his amber eyes raking over her. For a moment, the mask of the ruthless Mafia boss slipped, and Elara saw raw, unfiltered hunger. It made her breath hitch. "The ring," he said, nodding to her hand. "It belonged to my grandmother. She was the only woman my grandfather ever feared. Wear it like a shield." "And what am I shielding myself from tonight?" Elara asked, turning to face him. "Everyone," Leandro said, stepping forward to fasten a diamond necklace around her throat. His fingers grazed her neck, sending a jolt of electricity down her spine. "Tonight is the Commission Gala. It's neutral ground where the 5 families meet. But there is nothing neutral about it. It's a tank of sharks, Elara. And I just threw blood in the water by bringing you." "Great," she whispered. "And what's my backstory again?" "We met in Aspen. You were a nurse at the private clinic where I was treated for a fracture. We fell in love instantly. You don't know anything about the business. To you, I'm just a wealthy shipping magnate. Lying isn't my strong suit, Leandro." "Then don't lie," he said, gripping her shoulders. "Just look at me. Focus on me. Ignore everyone else." They took the private elevator down to the garage, but this time, they didn't take an SUV. They took a vintage silver Aston Martin. Leandro drove. The gala was held at the Sterling Hotel, a massive Gothic structure in Midtown owned by the Moretti family. The paparazzi were swarming the entrance like locusts. As the car pulled up, flashes popped in a blinding stroboscopic rhythm. "Showtime," Leandro murmured. He got out and opened her door. As Elara stepped out, the noise was deafening. "Mr. Moretti, is it true?" "Who is she?" "Look at the ring." Leandro's hand was firm on the small of her back, guiding her through the chaos. He moved with a predator's grace, unfazed by the lights. Inside the ballroom was a sea of black tuxedos and designer gowns. A string quartet played something mournful and expensive in the corner. As soon as they entered, the room went silent. Hundreds of eyes fixed on them. Elara felt her knees tremble, but she remembered the anchor. She remembered the freezing lake. "These people are just people," she told herself. "I fought a sinking jet. I can handle a cocktail party." She lifted her chin. "Good girl," Leandro whispered against her ear. They were immediately descended upon. Men with cold eyes and warm smiles shook Leandro's hand, offering congratulations that sounded like threats. Then the crowd parted. A woman approached. She was tall, blonde, and devastatingly beautiful. She wore a dress of red velvet that looked like spilled blood. "Leandro," she purred. She leaned in to kiss his cheek, but he pulled back slightly. "Sophia?" Leandro nodded. This was the ex-fiancée, the woman who might have cut his brake lines. Sophia turned her gaze to Elara. Her eyes were ice blue and devoid of any warmth. She scanned Elara from head to toe, dismissing her in a second. "And this must be the little nurse," Sophia said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Elara, was it? Such a quaint name. Do they have gala balls in whatever village you crawled out of?" Elara smiled, sweet and sharp. "We don't have balls, Sophia. We have bonfires, and usually we burn the trash rather than invite it to dinner." Leandro choked on a laugh, turning it into a cough. Sophia's eyes narrowed into slits. Charming. Leandro always did have a taste for rough trade. "Enjoy your night, darling. Try not to use the wrong fork." She glided away, disappearing into the crowd. "Remind me to give you a raise," Leandro murmured, guiding Elara toward the bar. "I'm not on your payroll," she snapped, though she felt a flush of pride. "Leandro." A deep, gravelly voice stopped them. A man in his 60s stood by a pillar. He was bald, with a thick grey moustache and a scar running through his lip. This was Mason, the consigliere, the man Leandro trusted with his life, usually. "Mason," Leandro said, his demeanor shifting to pure business. "Is everything in place?" "Security is tight," Mason said, his eyes flicking to Elara. "But Damon is making rounds. He's talking to the Russo family. He's agitated, Leandro. This engagement stunt. It's pushing him over the edge." "Good," Leandro said. "I want him over the edge. I want him to make a move. He might not be the only one," Mason warned softly. "I've been looking into the flight logs. The mechanic who signed off on your jet. He's dead. Found in the Hudson this morning. 2 bullets to the back of the head." Elara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Dead?" she whispered. "Loose ends," Leandro said, his jaw tightening. "Someone is cleaning up." "Dance with me," Leandro suddenly commanded, grabbing Elara's hand. "What? Now?" "Now. People are watching. We need to sell it." He pulled her onto the dance floor. The music was a slow waltz. Leandro placed one hand on her waist, pulling her flush against him. His other hand held hers. "Relax," he murmured. "You're stiff as a board." You just told me a mechanic was murdered, Elara hissed, staring at his tie, and that your brother is plotting a coup with the Russos. Don't think about that. Think about the music. Think about my hand. He spun her. For a second, the world blurred, the chandeliers, the staring faces, the danger. All she could feel was the heat of his body and the strength of his arm. He moved with surprising gentleness. "Why me?" she asked, looking up into his amber eyes. "You could have hired an actress, a model." "They can be bought," Leandro said quietly. "They can be scared. You dove into jet fuel to save a stranger. You don't scare easily, Elara Vance. That makes you valuable and dangerous." "I'm scared right now," she admitted. "Don't be," he said, leaning down so his forehead rested against hers. "I have you. I won't let you fall." For a moment, the lie felt real. The chemistry between them wasn't for the audience. It was a magnetic pull that terrified her more than the guns. Suddenly, the music stopped abruptly. A scream pierced the air. Elara spun around. Near the entrance, a waiter had dropped a tray of champagne. But it wasn't an accident. He was clutching his throat, foam bubbling from his lips. He collapsed, convulsing. "Poison," Leandro said instantly. He grabbed Elara's arm, his grip bruising. "It was meant for me. That was my usual waiter." Chaos erupted. Guests screamed and scrambled for the exits. "Giovanni!" Leandro roared. The head of security appeared out of nowhere, gun drawn. "Boss, we need to go. Now. The exits are compromised." "The kitchen," Leandro ordered. "Move!" He didn't wait. He half-dragged, half-carried Elara through the crushing crowd, shoving aristocrats and mob bosses out of the way. They burst through the swinging doors of the kitchen. Chefs were freezing in panic. Leandro kicked open the back alley door. The cool night air hit them, but so did the sight of 3 men in ski masks blocking the alleyway. They held suppressed submachine guns. "Down!" Leandro shouted, tackling Elara to the dirty concrete. Bullets chipped the brick wall above their heads. Leandro rolled, pulling a sleek black pistol from his waistband. Elara hadn't even known he was armed. He fired 3 times. 2 men dropped. The 3rd man scrambled for cover behind a dumpster. "Can you run in heels?" Leandro yelled over the ringing in her ears. "I can run barefoot." Elara kicked off her designer stilettos. "Go to the car. I'll cover you." Elara didn't argue. She bolted down the alleyway toward the street where the valet stand was. She heard gunfire behind her, then the heavy thud of a body. Leandro caught up to her, breathing hard but unharmed. "Get in." They reached the Aston Martin. Leandro threw her into the passenger seat and vaulted into the driver's side. He keyed the ignition. The engine roared like a beast. As they peeled away from the curb, screeching tires leaving black marks on the pavement, Elara looked back. Damon Moretti was standing at the alley entrance, watching them leave. He wasn't shooting. He was smiling, and in his hand he held a phone. "It wasn't Damon," Elara gasped, the realization hitting her. Leandro swerved through traffic, running a red light. "What?" "I saw him. He was on the phone. He looked relieved. If he wanted you dead, he'd be angry you escaped. He looked like he just got good news." "Then who?" Leandro demanded, eyes on the rearview mirror. "The waiter," Elara said, her mind racing. "The poison. Who knew which waiter served you? Who arranges the staff?" Leandro slammed on the brakes to avoid a taxi, then accelerated again. His face went pale. "Mason," he whispered. "Mason handles the logistics. Mason hires the staff." The betrayal hung in the air, heavier than the smell of burnt rubber. The man Leandro trusted most was the one holding the knife, and they were driving straight into a city that Mason controlled. The Aston Martin tore down the West Side Highway, weaving between cars at 100 miles an hour. Leandro's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "If it's Mason," Leandro said, his voice tight, "then we can't go back to the penthouse. His men run the building security. We're locked out." "Where do we go?" Elara asked. She was clutching the dashboard, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was barefoot, wearing a ruined $10,000 dress, and sitting next to a man who had just killed 2 people. "I have a safe house," Leandro said. "Off the books, old school. Nobody knows about it except me." "Are you sure?" Elara asked. "Because nobody seems to know a lot about your life lately." Leandro didn't answer. He checked the mirror. "We have a tail." Elara looked back. 2 black SUVs, identical to the ones that had picked her up that morning, were gaining on them. "Are those yours?" "Not anymore." One of the SUVs surged forward, slamming into the rear bumper of the Aston Martin. The sports car fishtailed violently. Elara screamed. Leandro fought the wheel, correcting the spin. "Hold on!" He downshifted, the engine screaming, and shot forward. But the SUVs were heavy and relentless. The lead SUV pulled up alongside them. The window rolled down. A man with a shotgun leaned out. "Get down!" Leandro shoved Elara's head into her lap. Boom! The passenger side window shattered, showering Elara with safety glass. The wind roared into the cabin. "Take the wheel!" Leandro yelled. "What?" "I can't shoot and drive. Take the wheel, Elara." Leandro unbuckled his seatbelt and leaned out the shattered window, firing back at the SUV. Elara scrambled across the center console, grabbing the bottom of the steering wheel. The car was vibrating, the speedometer reading 110. She steered from the passenger seat, trying to keep them steady, as Leandro waged a war halfway out the window. She saw a turn coming up, an exit ramp. "Leandro, turn!" she screamed. He ducked back inside, grabbed the wheel for a second to rip it to the right, and they drifted onto the exit ramp. The SUV behind them tried to follow, but took the turn too wide. It smashed into the concrete divider, flipping into the air in a shower of sparks. The second SUV, however, was still on them. "I got the tire," Leandro yelled, "but they're armored." They were in an industrial district now, warehouses and shipping containers. "The docks," Leandro said. "Go to the docks, Pier 42. Elara was actually in the driver's seat now, her bare feet pressing the pedals. She knew how to drive trucks in the mud. She knew how to handle a vehicle that was fighting her. She slammed the car into a drift around a corner, surprising even herself. "You drive better than my guys," Leandro noted, reloading his pistol. "I grew up on dirt roads," Elara shouted. They roared onto the pier. It was a dead end. The dark water of the Hudson River loomed ahead. "Stop!" Leandro commanded. Elara slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a halt inches from the edge. The pursuing SUV screeched to a stop 50 yards behind them. 4 men got out, using the doors as shields. They raised assault rifles. "We're trapped," Elara whispered. "Not yet," Leandro said. He reached into the glove box and pulled out a small remote detonator. "What is that?" "Insurance." Leandro pressed the button. 50 yards back, a section of the pier, right underneath the SUV, exploded. It wasn't a massive fireball, but a structural charge. The wood and concrete collapsed. The SUV plunged downward, crashing into the water below. The men who had been standing beside it fell with it, their screams cut short by the splash. Silence returned to the pier, save for the lapping water and the distant sirens. Leandro slumped back in his seat, exhaling a long, shaky breath. He looked at Alara. Her hair was wild, her face smeared with soot and blood from a small cut on her cheek. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "You just blew up a pier," she stated, staring at the hole in the ground. "I own the pier. I can blow it up if I want." Alara started to laugh. It was a hysterical, bubbling sound. "You people are insane. Completely insane." Leandro reached out and cupped her face. His thumb brushed away a smudge of dirt. "You were incredible." The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving Alara trembling. She leaned into his touch, seeking grounding. "Where do we go now?" she whispered. "The car is shot. The police are coming." "My boat," Leandro said, nodding toward a nondescript fishing trawler docked at the end of the pier. "It's not a yacht, it's a ghost ship, untraceable." They abandoned the ruined Aston Martin and boarded the trawler. Leandro got the engines running, quiet, efficient diesels, as they pulled away into the dark harbour, moving silently under the shadow of the Verrazzano bridge. Alara went into the small cabin below deck. It was cramped, smelling of salt and diesel. There was a small kitchenette and a bunk bed. Leandro came down a moment later. He had a first aid kit. "Let me see your face," he said. He sat her down on the bunk and cleaned the cut on her cheek. His movements were tender, a stark contrast to the violence of the last hour. "Mason," Leandro said, his voice hollow. "He's been like a father to me since my dad died. I don't understand." "Money?" Alara suggested. "Power?" "He has both. No, this is personal. This is hate." Leandro finished bandaging her cheek. He sat back, running a hand through his hair. "If Mason is the traitor, then he has the codes to my accounts. He has the locations of my warehouses. He has everything. I am effectively bankrupt and homeless until I can kill him." "You have this boat," Alara pointed out, "and you have me." Leandro looked at her. The air in the cabin shifted. It became heavy, charged. "Why are you still here, Alara? You could have run away at the gala. You could have run when the shooting started." "I told you," she said, her voice steady. "I pulled you out of that lake. I'm responsible for you now. It's like finding a stray dog. You can't just kick it back out into the rain." Leandro let out a low chuckle. "A stray dog? I'm the capo dei capi." "Right now, you're just a guy with a broken family and a stolen boat," she said softly. He leaned in. "And you are the most magnificent thing I have ever seen." He kissed her. It wasn't like the kiss he had given his hand earlier, or the fake intimacy on the dance floor. This was desperate. It tasted of survival and fear and heat. Alara kissed him back, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. The danger of the night seemed to evaporate, replaced by this singular, burning point of contact. He pushed her gently back onto the bunk. "Alara, if we do this, there is no going back. You become part of this life, for real." Alara looked up at him. She thought about her empty bakery. She thought about the thrill of the chase. She thought about the man who looked at her as if she were the only source of light in a dark world. "I think," she whispered, pulling his tie loose, "that I already am." But just as Leandro moved to deepen the kiss, a sound echoed from the deck above. A distinct, rhythmic thumping. Thump, thump, thump. Footsteps. Leandro froze. He pulled away instantly, his hand going to the gun on the table. He put a finger to his lips. They were in the middle of the harbour. No one could have boarded them, unless someone was already on the boat. Leandro motioned for Alara to stay put. He crept toward the stairs, the gun raised. "Hello, Leandro," a voice called down from the hatch. It was a woman's voice. Smooth, familiar. "Sophia." Leandro stopped. "Sophia, come up, darling," she called out, "and bring the baker. We have much to discuss." Leandro looked back at Alara, his eyes wide with shock. He signaled her to follow him, keeping behind him. They climbed onto the deck. Sophia was sitting on a cooler, legs crossed, smoking a thin cigarette. She wasn't alone. Sitting next to her, bound and gagged with duct tape, bruised and bloody, was Mason. Sophia smiled, the moonlight glinting off a silver pistol in her hand. "Surprise," she said. "I saved you a seat." Alara stared at the scene. Mason, the supposed traitor, was beaten to a pulp. Sophia, the jealous ex, was holding the gun. "You?" Leandro asked, keeping his gun trained on her. "You attacked the gala? You framed Mason?" "Oh, please," Sophia laughed, flicking ash onto the deck. "Mason is an old fool. He found out what I was doing, so I had to detain him. He didn't poison your waiter, Leandro. I did." "Why?" Leandro asked, his voice shaking with fury. "Because," Sophia stood up, her eyes flashing with madness. "If I can't have you, Leandro, then I'm going to take the only thing you love more than yourself, your empire." She pointed the gun not at Leandro, but at the engine block of the boat. "And," she grinned, shifting her aim to Alara, "I'm going to start by removing your new distraction." Alara didn't wait for Leandro this time. As Sophia's finger tightened on the trigger, Alara grabbed a flare gun mounted on the wall next to the hatch. She didn't aim. She just fired. The flare didn't hit Sophia. It struck the metal junction box on the wall right beside her head. With a deafening hiss and a blinding flash of magnesium red light, the flare exploded. It was like a miniature sun had gone supernova on the deck of the fishing trawler. Sophia screamed, dropping her gun and covering her eyes as sparks showered over her expensive silk blouse. The intense heat set her hair smoldering. Leandro moved instantly. He didn't go for Sophia. He went for Alara, tackling her to the deck and shielding her body with his own as the blinding light seared the air. "Stay down!" he roared. But Alara was running on pure instinct now. She wriggled out from under him. "Mason!" While Leandro scrambled toward Sophia, who was batting at her burning hair and cursing vilely, Alara crawled toward the bound consigliere. Mason looked bad. His left eye was swollen shut, and blood matted his grey moustache. He gazed at Alara with groggy surprise as she grabbed a rusty gutting knife from a tackle box nearby. "Careful, girl," he rasped, spitting blood. She sliced through the duct tape binding his wrists. "Can you move? For this, I can run a marathon." Across the deck, Leandro had Sophia pinned against the railing. He held her by the throat, his face inches from hers, his expression a mask of terrifying coldness. "You," Leandro growled. "You did all of this. The plane, the poison, framing Mason." Sophia, despite the burns on her neck and the gun pressed to her ribs, managed a grotesque, triumphant smile. "Of course it was me, you arrogant bastard," she spat. "Did you really think Damon had the brains? Or Mason had the guts?" "Why?" Leandro tightened his grip. "We were to be married. You would have had everything." "I would have been your wife," she shrieked, clawing at his hand. "A decoration. I didn't want to stand next to the throne, Leandro. I wanted to sit on it. The Russos understood that. They offered me what you never would, respect. A partnership. The Russos, Mason groaned, leaning heavily on Elara as they stood up. She sold us out to the Russo family. They're going to carve up your territory by dawn, Leandro. Not by dawn, Sophia laughed, her eyes wild. Now! She glanced over Leandro's shoulder toward the open water. Leandro turned. A sleek, cigarette-style speedboat was roaring toward them, its spotlight cutting through the darkness. It was moving fast, heading straight for the trawler. On the bow stood 3 men, armed with automatic rifles. My ride is here, Sophia sneered, and they aren't here to pick up hitchhikers. We have to jump, Leandro said, looking at Elara. Jump? Into the harbor? It's freezing, Elara cried. It's better than being perforated by Russo bullets, Mason grunted. The speedboat opened fire. Bullets pinged off the metal hull of the trawler and splintered the wooden railing. Leandro grabbed Elara's hand. Trust me. He didn't give her time to answer. He yanked her toward the starboard side, away from the approaching boat. Mason followed close behind. They leapt together into the black, icy abyss of New York Harbor. The shock of the cold water was paralytic. It knocked the breath right out of Elara. The salt water stung her eyes, and the weight of her soaked evening gown threatened to drag her down into the murky depths. A strong arm hooked around her waist. Leandro. He kicked hard, dragging her toward the shadow of the pier pylons, away from the light. Mason was struggling beside them, gasping for air. Above them, the speedboat pulled alongside the trawler. They heard shouting, then more gunfire. They were shooting up the empty deck. They think we're hiding below, Leandro whispered, treading water violently to keep them both afloat. We have maybe 3 minutes before they realize we're in the water. They swam under the rotting wooden structure of an abandoned pier. It smelled of creosote and dead fish. They huddled in the darkness, shivering uncontrollably, clinging to a barnacle-covered pylon. They watched as the speedboat circled the trawler. Then a massive explosion lit up the night sky. Sophia had rigged the trawler. A fireball billowed upward, orange and angry against the skyline. The shockwave hit them under the water like a physical punch. She blew up my boat, Leandro murmured, watching his escape vessel disintegrate. She tried to blow up us, Elara chattered, her teeth clacking together so hard she thought they might crack. We need to move, Mason said, his voice weak. I know a place near here. An old bootlegger tunnel under the meat-packing district. It's dry. And safe. They swam slowly through the oily water, using the shadows of the piers as cover. When they finally hauled themselves onto a slimy concrete embankment 20 minutes later, Elara collapsed. She was freezing, exhausted, and wearing rags that used to cost a fortune. She was a baker from upstate who had just survived a plane crash, a poisoning, a car chase, a shootout, and a boat explosion in less than 24 hours. Leandro knelt beside her, pulling her shivering body against his soaked chest to share body heat. You're all right, he murmured into her wet hair. I've got you. Elara looked up at him. Even wet, beaten and cornered, he looked like a king plotting a war. Sophia and the Russos, Elara whispered. They think we're dead. Again. A slow, terrifying smile spread across Leandro's face. It was the smile of the devil himself. Let them think it, he said softly. Let them celebrate. Let them get comfortable in my city. He looked at Mason, who was leaning against a brick wall, wringing out his suit jacket. "Mason," Leandro said. "Are you with me?" Mason spat a glob of blood onto the concrete. "Until the end, boss. That witch taped my mouth shut. I have a lot to say." "Good." Leandro stood up, pulling Alara up with him. He looked at the burning wreckage of the trawler in the distance. "Because tonight, the Moretti family dies, and tomorrow, we rise from the ashes." The bootlegger tunnel smelled of vinegar and damp earth, a stark contrast to the world Leandro usually inhabited. They had spent the night huddled under mouldy blankets, listening to the city rumble above them. By dawn, Mason lowered his burner phone, his face grim. "It's happening. Sophia is at the Obsidian Tower. She's called a commission meeting for noon to declare herself head of the family, backed by the Russos. We need to get into that tower," Leandro said, shirtless and pacing, the scar on his neck pulsing with tension. "But she'll have Russo guards at every entrance." "Not every entrance," Alara said, her voice cutting through the gloom. She reached into the pocket of her ruined dress and pulled out a plastic key card. "I used to deliver sourdough to Le Bernardin, the restaurant on the ground floor. This is a vendor access card for the service elevator. It bypasses the lobby and goes straight to the 50th floor kitchen." Leandro stared at the card, then at her. A look of pure awe crossed his face. The baker saves the day again. "I have a plan," Alara continued, her adrenaline spiking. "Mason, you go to the front door. Distract them. Make them think you're surrendering. Leandro, you take the elevator to the penthouse." "And you?" Leandro asked. "Leandro." "I'm going to the mezzanine security room," she said firmly. "If you walk in there, they'll shoot you on sight. You need an edge. I'm going to cut the power." "That's dangerous, Alara. I'm small. Nobody knows my face. Trust me." Leandro grabbed her face and kissed her hard. "Be invisible." High noon at the Obsidian Tower. The penthouse was bathed in sunlight. Sophia stood at the head of the marble table, raising a glass of champagne to Victor Russo. "To the new era," she beamed. Suddenly, the elevator doors pinged. Mason stumbled in, looking beaten and wretched. 2 guards grabbed him. "Wait!" Mason cried, falling to his knees. "Sophia, please, I swear loyalty, don't kill me." Sophia laughed, delighted by the sight. Look at the rat, scurrying for a new ship. While the room focused on Mason, 20 floors below, Alara slipped into the security room. 2 guards were glued to the monitors, laughing at Mason. She didn't hesitate. She swung a heavy fire extinguisher, smashing the glass door, then sprayed the blinding white chemical powder into their faces. As they choked, she slammed the master override lever down. In the penthouse, the world ended. The lights died. The electronic blackout shades snapped shut, plunging the room into total darkness. "What's happening?" Victor Russo screamed. The service door behind the bar kicked open. A silhouette stood framed by the dim red emergency lights of the hallway. Leandro Moretti stepped in, a pistol in each hand. "Did you start the party without me, Sophia?" His voice boomed. "Kill him!" Sophia shrieked. But the guards were blind in the dark. Leandro knew every inch of this room. 2 shots rang out, and 2 guards dropped, howling. "Mason!" "Now!" Leandro yelled. Mason rolled, pulling a concealed ankle gun, and shot the guard holding him. Victor Russo, realizing the tide had turned, shoved Sophia toward Leandro. "She's all yours, Moretti. The Russos were never here." He scrambled for the exit with his remaining men. Sophia stood alone, her face a mask of terror as the emergency lights pulsed red. Leandro. Baby. It was just business. You're right, Leandro said coldly, lowering his guns. Mason, take her to the basement. The police are on their way. As Mason dragged a screaming Sophia away, Leandro turned to the door. Elara? She walked in, covered in white powder, barefoot and shaking. Leandro holstered his weapons and crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. You shut down the tower, he whispered against her hair. I told you, she smiled weakly. I'm good in a crisis. It's over, Leandro said, looking around the room. But a king needs a queen. I wasn't lying at the gala, Elara. Stay, run this with me, for real. Elara looked at the man who had brought a war to her doorstep and realized she didn't want peace anymore. She wanted him. She kissed him, tasting smoke and victory. Okay, she whispered, but I'm redecorating. This penthouse is too cold. Leandro laughed, a genuine sound of joy as the lights flickered back on, illuminating the city that was, once again, theirs. And that is the story of how Elara Vance went from saving a drowning stranger to ruling the New York underworld. What did you guys think? Did Sophia get what she deserved? And would you have stayed with Leandro after all that chaos? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this whirlwind of Mafia romance and action, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel out. And if you want more thrilling stories like this one, make sure to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.